the crossroads is the real powerful thing because the crossroads allows you to choose. So once you've heard yourself, then you've got the opportunity to say yes to yourself. And all of these excuses and situations and what have you will come up to the surface. And then it's your job to find the solutions. It's your job to say, okay, I see that as a roadblock and I'm going to figure out a way around it, through it, under it, whatever I have to do in order to make this thing happen, in order for me to fully say yes to this thing. Hello, and welcome to Wednesday in the Wild on the Breakthrough Mode podcast. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me and pushing play on today's episode. This week, we have been focused on saying yes to yourself. And as I have been thinking about this and thinking about this episode, what I wanted to share and how I've been experiencing this in my life, I realized that it really starts with hearing yourself. Because if we are in a practice or in a habit where if we think about something that we want to do or something that is calling to us and we immediately dismiss it, like on impulse, like as a reaction, it may not even fully land as an option. It may not even fully come to your consciousness as something that you are saying no to yourself about, because you're not even allowing it to really fully form, really fully land. Because it just makes sense that if you aren't even hearing what it is that's calling to you or what it is that's pulling you, then you can't actually fully say yes to it. And you kind of just shut it down as a default. That's what we want to avoid. That's what we want to avoid. And there's the simple ways of saying yes to yourself, like, on a daily basis, giving yourself rest, maybe following your cravings or whatever it is. There's those simple ways to say yes to yourself. And there's the really big ways of saying yes to yourself. So, as I was thinking about this, the thing that came to my mind was the podcast. Obviously, I was thinking about this episode for the podcast and thinking about the podcast in general and how this was a kind of subtle and important moment of me saying yes to myself. I love it when people ask me why I started the podcast because the answer kind of surprises them, because honestly, I kind of felt a little bit harassed. Like, it kept coming up in my mind. Feeling I kept feeling this inner pull towards the podcast. I kept feeling like I know so much. I've learned so much. I'm so passionate about personal development and I know I could help people. I know I could be a encouraging, loving, guiding voice. And it felt like I would truly be denying something, maybe something to the world or something to myself, or even just something to my kids if I didn't do it. And that was a moment of me saying yes to myself. Nobody was going to come give me permission to start the podcast. Nobody was going to force me into it or even present it to me as an option. I knew it was an option in my head, but there was nothing external that came to me and was like, you need to start the podcast. It was all internal. And I was in a position of hearing myself. And so I could hear that within me. And then it was my choice on whether to act on it or not, on whether to say yes to that or not. And that was kind of a small moment that became a big moment. It became, the podcast has become so much a part of my life. And this is the 4th year of running it. And I have loved this silly little podcast so much. And so that small moment of saying yes to myself really became this bigger thing in my life that I love and that I cherish and that I value and that I'm so proud of. The thing that keeps coming to me as I've thought about hearing yourself and being able to say yes to yourself is that this world is so loud. It is so loud. Even if you're not on social media, like the urgency of things, the being pulled here, the this needs to be done and that and this and the other, like it is so loud, it is so busy, and it can be really easy to be in a place of not hearing yourself, of just being in this, default mode, this autopilot, this going with the flow, following whatever is screaming the loudest, tending to things. It's so loud and it can be so endless. So, in order to start hearing yourself, you have to make time and space to hear yourself. I was coaching somebody the other day around habits and finding this transformational habit, and I told him that this transformational habit that's going to help you step into who it is you want to become, this is going to be something that you feel an inner pull towards. It's quiet. It's an inner pull. There's not going to ever be anything external. Sometimes people think that like the transformational habit is this one secret habit that I'm going to hand to you, or it's something that I personally do. And maybe it is something that I do, but maybe it's something that I don't. That's not really the point. The point is that it's something that pulls you towards being who it is that you want to become. But it's quiet. It's quiet. It's a quiet pull. And it's a practice to recognize what that feels like. It's a practice to recognize those subtle desires, those subtle what ifs. And so when we get to this point of, okay, I realize this pull, I'm feeling it, I can acknowledge it, then we're at the crossroads where we can say yes to ourselves. And then what usually happens here is we immediately start in on the reasons why we can't. We've got all the excuses, the reasoning, the whatever, like it's not the right time, or I don't have the money, or I have kids at home, or blah, 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 whatever. They can be real situations, and there can also be solutions for every excuse. There can be a solution for every situation. There, I do the podcast and have all of this, and I have 2 kids at home during the summer. I could very easily be like, well, I don't run the podcast while my kids are home because it's loud and blah, blah, blah. And I could take that from like an excuse place, or I could be like, I don't run the podcast during the summer because I choose to spend my time with my kids. However, I'm taking it from a both and my kids are home and I can still run the podcast and I can still spend time with them and have fun with them. And I can do both. And there doesn't have to be this mutual exclusivity unless I choose for there to be. That's the crossroads. The crossroads is the real powerful thing because the crossroads allows you to choose. So once you've heard yourself, then you've got the opportunity to say yes to yourself. And all of these excuses and situations and what have you will come up to the surface. And then it's your job to find the solutions. It's your job to say, okay, I see that as a roadblock and I'm going to figure out a way around it, through it, under it, whatever I have to do in order to make this thing happen, in order for me to fully say yes to this thing. I love that phrase, that saying of like, if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not, you won't. That holds true. That truly holds true. If it's important and critical to you, you will figure it out. You will find a way. And if it's not, then you won't. And then that's fine. So for this Wednesday in the Wild episode, I try to bring it into my current experience and what I am working through and going through. And as we have been preparing the house to sell and as the girls have been home, I have found it really hard to say yes to myself without some sort of urgency. I was telling Jake yesterday after I scheduled a bunch of podcast episodes, I think I got 3 scheduled yesterday, which felt so good. But previously to yesterday, so like last week, it felt like everything was happening last minute. Like I was scheduling the podcast the night before, right before bed. It felt last minute. It felt rushed. It was, I really want to get this done. And I have put it last. And that didn't feel good. I did not love that experience. I love looking at my podcast list and seeing all the ones that are scheduled and know that it's just taken care of, that I've done it, it's taken care of. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be last minute. So with this topic this week, I was like, okay, I am going to practice saying yes to myself and putting those things that I need to get done that are important to me that maybe don't bother anybody else, but will bother me if they hang out in my head all day long while I do all the other things, while I paint baseboards and while I unload the dishwasher and while I help the girls with whatever it is they're doing. It will hang out in my head and bother me all day long. And it doesn't have to. I can just take care of it first thing in the morning. Practice saying yes to myself because I feel that inner pull that like, this is important and I want to get it done. And then I can do all the other things with so much more peace and flow and joy without this like nagging feeling. So, what I'm playing with this week is when I wake up in the morning, I ask myself, what do I feel the pull towards today? What feels good to do or what will feel good to have done that I can really say yes to and do it. And sometimes that's work related. Sometimes it's the podcast or sometimes it's the emails or sometimes it's like, I want a Starbucks today. Before I start painting, I am going to go get a chai. And that will feel good. And that will feel like saying yes to myself or whatever it is. But this week, I'm hoping that you tune into yourself, start to hear yourself, start to notice, acknowledge, and recognize what it would mean, what it would look like, what it would feel like to say yes to yourself. And then ask yourself how you can make that happen. Where can it fit? How can you start in on it? How can you say yes in some little way or maybe some big way? Or how even can you start generating solutions if you see that there are roadblocks or if you see that there are situations that need to be cleared or organized or whatever? How can you figure this out so that you can more fully say yes to it? Because, in all honesty, if there's something that pulls at you and you can automatically see the reasons why you can't, you see all of the excuses right off the bat, simply looking for solutions and getting curious about how can this work is a way of saying yes to yourself. You haven't automatically shut it down. It's not a no by default. So even just asking yourself, how can I make this work? How can I schedule my podcasts first thing in the morning? How can I do this? Where in my schedule can I fit in a trip to Starbucks? How can I make time for this thing that is pulling at me? How can I say yes to this more fully? Get curious. Start asking yourself those questions. Start asking yourself how it could be possible, how it could work, and be open to the solutions. That's what I'm playing with this week because my house is loud, both like audibly, like my kids are really loud, and visually by all of the unfinished tasks. We have piles everywhere simply because, we're shifting things out of places and packing up boxes and this, that, and the other. And so it's visually very loud, all the undone tasks, all the things that need to be done, and it's audibly loud. How can you find the space to hear, to feel what is pulling at you so that you can begin to say yes to it? That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I totally love you. Bye for now.